Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're just doing a bit of work on the old Chinese quad bike again. I've noticed it making a bit of a clunky sound when I'm riding along. I've tried to repeat it when I'm just rolling, but it only seems to do it when it's under power, so it's a bit difficult to record that because it's a bit loud when I'm riding along under power. Anyway, what I first thought was going on was the chain riding up on top of the sprocket and then falling back down again. But now that I examine it a bit closer, it doesn't seem to be doing that. The chain's working fine, there's no stuck links, everything's lined up. What I think is happening is it's the bearings in the back wheel here. I've got a fair bit of play in the axle. If I can do it one-handed. Maybe you can see that. So I reckon the clunking sound is the bearings inside of that thing. You can hear it a bit there. So what I've decided to do, I got onto eBay and searched around and found this thing. It's basically the axle, the bearings and the housing, everything all together. I could have pulled the existing one apart and hunted around for bearings, but I use this bike every day trotting the ponies around the place, giving them some exercise. So I didn't really want it to be offline for months while I wait for whatever bearings are in there to show up. So this thing is a complete unit, and I'll just pull the current one off and put that on there. I notice it's got a shock absorber mount on the top there that this one doesn't have. The shock absorber is mounted up there, but that bracket can stay with the bike, and I just pull out this one here. I don't think the other shock absorber bracket will be in the way, it'll just be a spare. So all good. I'll pull the brakes off, pull the chain tensioner off, undo the 4 bolts that hold the axle, take the chain off, and the whole thing should just come out. This one is not done up tight. I'll have to replace the brake disc and the sprocket and stuff like that, but that's all part of the fun. The reason I've got all these washers stacked up there is the thread on that bolt is just chewed out where it sits all the time. So to get around the chewed mark, I put a stack of washers on it. I've got to make a new one of those bolts, or otherwise find one online. You can see there at the back there, the thread's all chewed out. The back brakes don't currently work. I replaced them when I got the bike with all new stuff, but never could bleed the line. I bought myself a vacuum bleeder, and that'll be the subject of another video. The front brakes still work, and it's pretty hard to go over the handlebars on a quad bike unless you're riding like a crazy person. Like the brake pads fall out when you take them off. Maybe they just fall out. That's looking pretty cactus for a brake that's never been used. Unbelievable. These have got captive nuts on the back of them here, so I should just be able to undo them. I'll use the ringy end. There's 2 more down the back in here. With that loose now, I should be able to move the chain that way and get it off. Easy peasy. Now I just got to take those bolts all the way out. I'll bring you back when that's done. That's got all those bolts out. Only thing I've got to do now is take the chain off. Then I can put this up on the bench and swap all the parts around. There we go. That's got the spring clip off. Just take the joiner link out along with this little plate. That's the plate. There we go. Just hang on to those bits so I don't lose them somewhere. That's got it up on the bench. I apologise for the sound quality today. I've lost my little lapel mic, can't find it, so you're on the built-in mic until I find it. Next thing to do is just take both the wheels off. And I break the little buggers. They look like nylon nuts on the back, but looking at that, these are threaded, so I'll need to undo the lock nuts from the back. What is that one? 13. That was just sitting there. Alrighty, you don't need to watch me pull tyres off. I'll do that and bring you back. I've got both the wheels off. Those bolts came out easy once I had the lock nuts off the back, as you would expect. It's looking pretty similar. I noticed the threads on the end here are bigger on this one than they are on that one. But that won't really matter because all it does is hold the centre of the wheel on. So let's just make sure that these holes are roughly the same pitch. Which they are. And I'll make sure that this distance between here and here is about the same, because that's what's got to go in between the frame. It's probably the inside dimension, not the outside dimension. That one. Which it is, about half a mil difference there. So now I've got to get the disc off there, the sprocket off here, and these lock nuts onto there as well. And I think once I figure out how all this stuff works, the splines and bits, that's it. So it's just a matter of moving the bits across. There's some bolts here to take out and some bolts way down in there to take out. Perhaps, no, I won't be able to get that off without undoing those bolts, because the axle is one piece and it slides out that way. This end is bigger here than that end. So to get this off, I'll need to remove that business there, which will come straight off. And there's no washer on there to stop that getting pushed up. I might not need one, but everything else seems the same. So let's do that one piece at a time. Probably should start at this end so pieces can go that way. I undid those while it was still on the bike, just with a big shifter. see a problem already. If that washer is captive on there, those nuts can't come off. And how the hell does this come off there? Well, that's easier. At least now I can get those bolts out of there without having to get the spanner down in those little joints. There's certainly a huge amount of play in that one that this one doesn't have. It doesn't sound too good. That one's got no roughness at all. Let's see if I can get this sprocket off. Figure out what the hell holds it all on. That washes the trick. All sorts of goo in there. I'll fiddle with that and I'll bring you back when I can see how it comes apart. They're pretty tight. I could not budge them at all without a bit of heat. That's got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them done. All right, I'll give that a bit of a spray. Go and have a cup of tea while it all cools down. I can't see how this washer comes off. I think originally there might have been a spline cut to match this spline on the inside of the washer, and it's just been wranged over time. So the only way we're going to get any of this stuff off the shaft is by cutting that washer off. Another half is already gone. don't know whether you'll be able to see it. If I take my earmuffs off I can talk normally. But this does look like it's got a spline in there. No way it was going to go off over those. It's all been razzed up over the years. Excuse me. Couple of nicks in the shaft there, but if I ever want to reuse this, I don't think that would matter. So now, I'll need to get that off to get the sprocket off. Can't see any other way it can come off this direction. I guess whenever you have to change the sprocket on one of these, this is the rigmarole you have to go through. It's a pretty shitty design, isn't it? Thanks, China. I ended up hammering and I couldn't get the shaft out of the hub. So I ended up making a little bracket, just a couple of holes. That's 12mm threaded bar. The nuts up here are fixed in there. They're the captured nuts. So I just cranked down on the nuts back here, and as I started to bend a piece of angle iron, I just gave it a good belt there with the hammer, then tightened the nuts up some more. And eventually that popped the shaft out. It left one bearing in here, and the other bearing came out on the shaft. I ended up hammering that bearing off. You can see the number there for those of you who are interested, in case you're trying to buy your own. 6006RS. And this one is actually alright. I can spin it around, feels good, but the other one, that's another story. I'll just show you a close-up of that. These were the seals that came out of there. You can see they're pretty crappy. That's the seal off the end of the bearing, just fell off. And if we look at the bearing itself, you can see it's really crunchy. So that one's completely cactus. If I want to save this hub and rebuild it for another day, I'll have to hammer that one out of there from the other side. I should be able to get a piece of bar in there from the other end and tap that out. I think it's otherwise undamaged. But anyway, my job now is to get all those bits reassembled onto the new one. Okay, that's got the sprocket mounted. I was careful to put it back on in the same direction. Over time, the teeth will get slowly worn in a hook shape, and if you put them on the other way, it'll wear out much faster. I know the chain on this thing is just about had it. The sprocket is fairly worn, but I'm just going to ride it until something falls apart. I counted how many teeth there are on this thing, so I know what it is when I need to reorder it. It's a 40-tooth sprocket, and I've remounted the disc brake on this side, even though it doesn't really do much. The two nuts here, wasn't really sure how tight to do those. I just did the inside one up until the whole thing locked up, then come back about an eighth of a turn, spun the lock nut up against it, and now I've got a pretty good feel on there. The rubber seals in here are actually fairly tight on that diameter there. It's just Chinese stuff. Same deal on this side. Those seals are pretty tight against that diameter. So it's just the way it is. I make them cheap and spit them out the door. Considering without the sprocket and the disc brake, that whole assembly cost me 135 bucks. So you can tell they're not spending a lot of time on them. Next thing is to remount the wheels. That's pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead and do that. Put them all back on, and if there's anything interesting mounting the back on the bike here, I'll show you that as well. Didn't take long to find something. This is the new bracket here, and they were the bolts that were in it. They're the right size bolts. They're 10mm, but they just won't go in. starts to go. On closer inspection, if you look at it, you can see that this thread is finer than this one. So this is a M10 by 1.5 millimeter pitch. I sent Mrs. Shed up to the shop and she got me a packet of these. This is M10 by 1.25. They go in. While she was there, I got her to pick up some nuts of the same size. What happens is they clamp the wheel there, and then there's a lock nut on the back, and these are also nylock, so they won't come off. So I'll get this bracket assembled onto the wheel and the axle back onto the bike now. None of that's too complicated, but let's do that and I'll bring you back. Just had a thought. I wonder if these bolts are the right thread to go into those captive nuts. Let's try it. Bloody hell, they're not. These are a finer thread. So I'm going to need to go back to the shop. And the hard part's going to be picking out what they actually are. It's the next day. I've been back to the shop, got the right bolts this time. Now I should be just able to put them in. I've got my axle just packed up on some blocks here. It's not very heavy, I know it looks a bit sketchy, but it's just sitting there. Now I can put these bolts in here, hopefully. I'm sure they'll fit now, just a matter of lining them up. Wouldn't be surprised if something's knocked around a bit. That thread looks all right. That's our Chinese thread in there. It's going to go. What I might do is just put a dab of grease on it and wind it in there with the socket. The little dab of grease jar is almost empty. That's all the way through. Try again. Might have been a washer and a spring washer on there before. Let's do that again. Never liked that combination of spring washers and flat washers, but a lot of people do it. That's got it, eventually. And with those in there finger tight, I can take out my packing. Now that'll should just swing on there. Why doesn't it? That way, just swing on there, and that's so the chain tensioners will work. That needs to go a fair bit the other way. So the bolts line up with the slots at the bottom there. Now I get to use these these things again. Bit of grease on the bolt. When you want to put things together dry, just make sure it starts in there. Usual crap, different day. Yep, that's in there. So that'll go that way around, like that. 2 more spring washers there, so we'll put them on. And that'll go through there like that. I'll bring you back when that's in there. Alrighty, I got them back on there. I had to file out the slots, they didn't quite line up properly. So now I can stick my chain back on and on the front sprocket. And the spring clip. There it is. Let's see if I can fire this across the room. Now they say if the chain's going around that way, I don't think it makes much difference. So if it hits something, the spring clip doesn't fly off, but that ain't gonna happen. That's it. So now I just need to adjust the tension. It's not too bad. And that's where I had all those washers on there before. Worn out nylon nut. You wait there, I'll just go grab a spanner. I think it's pretty hard to get this to tighten unevenly, but basically you want to make sure that your sprocket is pointing at the sprocket down the front there. That's pretty good. Don't want it too tight. No crunchy bits. Let's tighten up these buggers. Okay, they're nice and tight. That just leaves the brakes that don't work. Full bolts that I don't need. So we'll put these back on there. And notice before that little brake disc falls out, even though it's never been used. A brake pad, I should say. Okay. Alright guys, I reckon we can call that done. Next is the test drive. I think the moral of this story is unless you've bent your axle, don't worry about replacing it. I thought it was going to make it easier just to pop the new axle on there. Didn't turn out that way. What I should have done was pulled it apart, found out what the bearings are, and replaced the bearings, put it all back together again. Would have been quicker. So next what I'll show you is how to replace the bearings in the other one. I bought a couple, so I may as well have a spare on the shelf because there's nothing else wrong with the rest of it. But that's for another video. I'll take you for a test drive now. Hey, Rog. Charlie, show us your face. Big Dick. All crusty. You're in the middle, Charlie. That's the diet paddock. They stay in there overnight so they can't gorge themselves. Not that you'd ever know it. We take them for a run now, and then they get the morning off to eat as much as they want. Ready? How'd you go, Dix? All right? had a couple of days off, so they're a little bit out of shape. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of thing, don't forget to give us a like, and if you want to see more like this, do a subscribe and turn the bell on, and we'll see you on the next one. Can't really see you.